Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Jackie Luqman.
And I'm the Shaheed Luqman.
And he is over there. Say hey.
There you go.
And welcome to Live and Coffee Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation. It is Thursday night.
You forgot.
What? Oh, I'm sorry. The most dangerous show on the internet.
That's
so sorry.
right.
I forgot. You got to remind me to say that. I usually let you say it, don't I?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I flipped over too fast and I got all excited because, you know, a lot of stuff is going on this week, y'all. Tonight's Thursday, April 26th. We're coming to you live from Washington.
Do you know where your children
are? We know where our dog is. Our four-legged child is. Live from Washington, D.C. Man, we got a lot to pack into this show because a lot has happened over the past couple of days. Kanye lost his mind. I mean, like all the way lost his mind. Again. Bill Cosby was just convicted of sexual assault. Wait a minute. Wait, do it again. Do it again. Oh, Chance the Rapper came out and said some stuff on Twitter about, you know, black people don't have to be Democrats.
He's right, we don't have to be.
He's right, we don't have to be Democrats. I mean, a lot has happened in the past couple of days, y'all, and all of this, everything that has happened, Ben Carson said last week in some press conference, hey Scully over there on YouTube, some press conference last week, he told a lady who asked how, you know, what was his advice for her to get out of poverty, and he said that she should get married.
Yeah, he was like, if you ask me, I think that if she wants to get out of poverty, the best thing would be to possibly get married. My mother didn't get married, that's why she stayed in poverty.
You are so wrong. But that's kind of true. Look, all of this stuff and Carson's Carson's announcement today of the proposal that he wants to triple the rents in affordable housing for poor people and for somebody who grew up in affordable housing around a bunch of poor black people. He knows who that's gonna affect the most. So all of that stuff matters. It all matters because it's all a distraction from what the problems really are and what really causes the economic dilemma or the economic crisis, because we're at a point now where we are at a crisis point in America in regard to black people. So before we dive into this, I just want to give you guys a few minutes to invite people to this video, share this video over there, you guys on YouTube, invite your friends. Remember that you can support Luqman Nation through a monthly patronage through Patreon and through one-time donations through GoFundMe and PayPal. You can find us on all those platforms under Luqman Nation, Luqman Nation. Tune in on Saturday nights at 9 p.m. For Pitbull in Politics. What? Did you just?
No, that was Bruce.
That was.
He heard Pitbulls in Politics, and I've been working with him to try to train him how to come in on cue. So he's getting there.
Anyway, tune in at 9 p.m. For Pitbull in Politics. On Spreaker, we don't live stream Pitbull in Politics, but it's a great conversation anyway. Sometimes we do a show on Sunday night. Usually we try not to, but sometimes there's too much stuff going on that we can't avoid it. And as always, you can follow us on Facebook under Coffee, Current Events, and Politics in Luqman Nation. You can subscribe to our channel on YouTube, also under Luqman Nation. Woo, let's get to this.
Let's get to it.
Okay.
Let's show them why we're the most dangerous show on the internet.
I understand that people are all invested in Bill Cosby's conviction. And especially I understand, like, for black people, right? Because Bill Cosby's legacy is the Cosby Show.
It is, yeah.
Right? And the Cosby Show was really the first...
I mean, at least for our generation.
Right, that's a good point for our generation, because there was Fat Albert before then.
Right.
And but the Cosby Show was like the standard for black excellence in television almost, right? And for a lot of black people, the Cosby Show was important because it showed a black family in a healthy, positive light. That's what people say. Now, the Cosby Show was not the only black family that has ever been shown on television, though. And this is the problem that some black people always had with the Cosby Show, that they were like the archetype for respectability politics, where people didn't celebrate the Cosby Show because it showed a black family in a positive light. They used the Cosby Show to tell black people, if you were all just more like Cosbys, like the Cosbys, then we would respect you more. And Bill Cosby pretty much agreed with that, right? We all know about his speeches to black people where he would shame poor black people. And yeah, black people have always had kind of a complicated relationship with Bill Cosby. The reason Cosby and his problems are not something that black people really can afford to get all invested in, especially when we're trying to defend this legacy of this positive image of a black family on television, is because what did that positive image of a black family on television really do to change the social and political realities for black people?
Well, I'll tell you what the Cosby Show did for me as a kid coming up.
What
just made me feel worse about myself.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, look, the way the Cosby Show was, I mean, don't get me wrong. It contributed a lot to, I guess, the overall, I mean, we grew up on good times, you know what I mean?
Right.
So, we were used to seeing black families struggle and all this stuff. So I guess the Cosby Show was kind of a welcome change from that type of thing. But I remember being in high school and watching the Cosby Show and felt like my life was like shit. Because, I mean, Cosby was a doctor. Claire is a lawyer. And she pumped out all them damn kids and still got a law degree. With Rudy being 5. I mean, I'm like, how the hell you do that? So, I mean, not that it can't be done, but I just thought, like, I couldn't relate to the Cosby Show. I mean, I was one of those black kids that really couldn't relate to the Cosby Show because, I mean, I just thought that they were too perfect. I mean, they didn't reflect anybody I knew in my neighborhood. And, but but that's not to take away, Lisa Catlett said, who has the pound cake now? No, hey Lisa, who's going to get the pound cake?
Who's going to pound that cake now, buddy?
But no, I mean, the Cosby Show, I'm not taking anything away from it. I think that it was a welcome change from always seeing black folks struggle and everything, and to see, a upper middle class black family. But yeah, I couldn't relate to it, too much. And I don't think I was the only one. I think a lot of black people couldn't relate to it, but then some did. I think it was used because if you remember, the Cosby Show came out during the 80s, which was Wall Street,
Right.
money, and all that stuff. So it was during the excess decade of the 80s. So, you know, it was like, you know, sort of like, I would say America's last decade of hope and optimism.
Right.
That you could make it in this country. That's dead now.
Yeah.
But back in the 80s, there still was some hope, like, yeah, we work hard, we make the right decisions. We might could, we might can achieve something in this country. But, you know, the government pissed on that parade. So now it's like the late 80s was the last decade. But yeah, Jackie, getting back to your point, Cosby, for our generation, I mean, he was like America's dad, you know,
right.
You know, to say he was America's dad. But America's dad to me was James Evans.
Yeah,
but, you know,
yeah.
that, you know, I don't want to get off topic. But because I can relate to James Evans.
Exactly.
But Bill Cosby, he was. I mean, he was more like America's dad during the 80s. He couldn't do no wrong.
Right.
Really, you know?
Right. And I'm so glad that you said that James Evans was more like America's dad for like poor black people like us.
Kids, yeah.
Because good times was the reality we lived. So that's why you're right. A lot of poor black people could not relate to the Cosbys. And then, you know, so a lot of people spent a whole lot of time using the Cosby's positive black family image as like a bludgeon on the heads of poor black America, basically telling poor black America that in order for you to be respected in this country, you have to be more like the Cosbys. And people are now spending a whole lot of emotional, what I'm calling this empty emotional currency. You know, spending a whole lot of time defending Cosby and you know, so it's saying how he shouldn't have been convicted and you know, he did all this for black people and this is what the system does to black. He got convicted because of his own words and his own actions.
And I mean, we got a lot more worthy people that we can throw that kind of stuff behind than Bill Cosby. It's like,
yeah.
I mean, I'm hearing black people talk about, oh man, they just want to just take a powerful black man down, and they just wanted to do this and they just wanted to do that. Trust me, there's plenty of people out there, plenty of black people, both male and female, who we can rally that behind than Bill Cosby. I think that Cosby hasn't really earned, in my opinion, that type of loyalty from us, especially before these allegations came out and he had to deal with this. Cosby was, to me, he was that dude that used respectability politics to go around and bash poor black people. As Jackie, as we're going to go in and talk about during the rest of the show, that how a lot of these people who appear to have made it, Cosby did make it, but who appear to have made it, and like my grandfather said, got a couple of dollars over breakfast money, you know, feel now that they can't relate to nobody in the hood, or feel now that, you know, somehow that that it's the fault of disenfranchised people. It's the fault of people who have been robbed and pillaged by the system. That is their fault that they're not in a certain place economically. Exactly.
And Cosby, for all of his running around giving speeches, this whole show is not about Cosby. This show is about people like him. So he's running around, you know, get on the lecture circuit, and the conservatives loved every time he would give a speech or a lecture in front of a black audience, you know, telling them that, look, black women are too fat and y'all don't focus on educating your children, and how are you going to scream about the police shooting your child when your child just stole a pound cake, and, you know, that's why he got shot. What the hell was he doing stealing the pound cake? Bill Cosby never asked, why was your child stealing food? Do you not have food in your house? He justified systemic violence against black people because we had a nerve to be hungry enough to maybe want to steal something to eat. So my issue with Cosby and people who focus on defending his legacy of his positive image of a black family. What's that positive image of a black family in television done to move the needle for politics? and how politics have affected black people, especially poor black people, but not just poor black people. Let's get that straight. Because, see, you can have a positive image all you want to, but that positive image was not used to, like you say, the people in power say, you know what? We've really screwed black people over. We need to make sure that all black people can aspire to live the life or have the opportunities, equal access to the opportunities to live the life that the Cosbys have. That's not what they use that positive black image for.
And I think that one of the things that all of this have in common, because like you said, we're not just talking about Bill Cosby, but we're talking about, the title is that we don't have time for Cosby, Kanye, Candice, or Carson. One of the things that I think links all of this together, in my view, is that this also goes back to the trend of middle class blacks and upper middle class blacks not advocating for the masses.
Right.
This goes back to the upper middle class and middle class black people who themselves benefited from the civil rights struggle, them who benefited from the activism of the masses. Because let's be clear, that the civil rights struggle, even though in the South it was basically a black middle class struggle, but most of the people that was getting their heads busted in was the masses.
Exactly.
It was the same way up in the North. Even though the North was more of a grassroots struggle, wasn't so much of a middle class struggle like it was in the South. But even in the North, I mean, most of the police brutality and everything was bore by the poor masses. And so what happens is that once, and we had spoke about this on the show, we seen that once the crumbs fell from the table, and the black middle class and upper middle class increased a little. Because we always talk about the racial wealth grab. There wasn't no big increase. Right. There was no big increase in black middle class or in the black upper middle class. It was just a small increase. But yet it only took a small increase for that section. It's not everybody, but for that section who also became the political class. They also became the political class, and they were more vested or invested in protecting what the small spaces, or what I should say, the little piece of the sliver of the pie. They were more invested in keeping that for them and theirs, and not advocating for the masses at all. And they were being used by the white supremacist power structure, like Bill Cosby was being used, like Kanye West is being used right now, like Candice is being used, and like Carson is being used to basically just bash black people in the head, poor black people in the head, and basically tell them that you're not achieving in this country because it's your fault. And Carson, even more sinister, by saying you ought to be punished for not being able to succeed in this country.
Exactly. That's exactly right. That's the one thing that all these people have in common. They carry this message of this empty emotional currency that people like them like to use. And it's not just them. It's plenty of people, just regular everyday folks who are on social media, who write articles, who are entrepreneur pushers, who carry this same message of what I call this empty emotional currency, where they peddle in this this empty idea of hope, instead of actually facing the reality of where we are, admitting that politics is what caused us to be where we are, and working and focusing on politics to turn it around, to change it, and to fix it. So, you know, we got these people who are, some of these people even making money off of bashing black people and giving them this false and empty hope that if they just work hard enough, they can beat poverty in this country. You know, they don't need to rely on the man. They don't need to beg the government for handouts. That's the other thing they say, right? That's right. Yep. Because
we can do it all. We can do for self.
Right. You know, we've been begging the government for help for 400 years. And what have they done? So why are we getting involved in politics? There are black people who actually say that and believe that, and these folks, the Bill Cosbys, the Kanye West, Kanye's peddling his weird existential odd spiritual dragon spirit with Donald Trump. You know, the mob can't make me stop loving Trump. Well, do you see what politics has done to this mob that you have ignored, to the tune of 9.5 million people who unfollowed that Bama on Twitter because they're like, your politics don't even make sense, bruh. I mean, we're not talking about whether we like a politician or not. For black people in this country, we're talking about literal economic life or death. And Kanye West is sitting there talking about he and Donald Trump have the same dragon spirit and he loves him. I don't care how you personally feel about that man. If you have this access to him, what are you talking about in regard to politics that affect black people? But see, Kanye West doesn't know anything about politics because he believes that all you need to do is have the right energy and your subconscious can allow the manifestation of what's in your consciousness or something like that. He believes that ridiculous mess. So he doesn't focus on politics.
But then again, Kanye is richer than he was during Katrina.
Oh.
See, during Katrina,
when he said Bush didn't like black people,
during Katrina, when that Kanye, that college dropout Kanye, when that Kanye came out and said unapologetically that George Bush didn't like black people, he was just getting on board. You know, he ain't got the Kanye money. He has had yet to make the money that this Kanye, the alternative universe Kanye, that somebody snatched that Kanye and replaced him with Earth 2 Kanye.
Kanye.
And you know, and so this is the thing, and this seems to happen every time when we talk about how money corrupts the values of people, and especially corrupt the values of oppressed people. You know, Kanye, when he was, like I said, college dropout, and he was trying to hustle beats, he was connected to the street. And so being connected to the street, he understood the struggle. So that's why he was able to sit up there and see what was happening and say, look, George Bush don't care or don't like black people, because he seen what was going on. But then let's move it a decade and see now he got money. He's married into the Armenian Kardashians. He can marry a Kardashian money. I can marry a Kardashian money. You know, so it ain't, he didn't get Shaniqua and them out of the hood and give them a come up. You know what I mean? But no, he got the Kardashians. And so all of this Hollywood bubble, no longer connected to the streets, no longer connected to the masses. So now all of a sudden the thing is that his views change. Now, I don't have a particular problem with him liking Donald Trump. Right. That's his right. So I'm not going to sit up here and bash him for that. What I'm bashing, well, it's not even a bash, it's observation. What it is the fact that we've seen this with Floyd Mayweather. That's right. We've seen this with all of these black folks, Oprah, all of them that got a little bit of bank. Barack Obama, they get a little bit of bank, and all of a sudden it's not about changing the racist system to benefit the masses, because they've achieved a little bit of money. Right. So their goal is not to enlarge it. They're not to enlarge the pool and bring others in. Their thing is that I made it. Why can't you? Right. Now Oprah, she's a little bit more aware and astute, as you might say, because she has said on numerous occasions that she recognized that she's the exception. The problem of it is that the Kanyes and them don't understand that. Right. The problem of it is that the Floyd Mayweathers and the Candices who's on Fox News and all the rest of them, the Ben Carsons, they don't understand that they are the exceptions. We've said this time and time on this show that the unfortunate, and I say this again, the unfortunate reality of black people in this country is that, first of all, you have to be chosen by white people in order to make it in this country. You have to be. Now people look at that and be like, oh, no, you can make. There is no meritocracy when it comes to nobody in this country, and especially no meritocracy when it comes to black people. That don't mean that we can't make our own way somehow, but we got to, and that's the point of this show. We got to get out of this fantasy that we can somehow, on individual effort, transcend white supremacy without the help of politics and government.
Exactly. So these people, with all of their defense of their, these people's bad behavior, whether it's Cosby or Ben Carson with his respectability BS, whether it's Candice Owens on Fox News with her conservative talking points that are just more respectable. It's all these people focus on this BS, feel good hope peddling. That's what it's like a fake that they peddle in this emotional currency that is like as fake as Monopoly money. And the only thing that's written on the other side of it is there's like a picture of a random black person. There's like a picture of Kanye on the face of the bill, and on the back of the bill is just the word hope. It ain't worth shit. Right. It's not worth anything.
That's right.
You know what these people and the crap they peddle remind me of?
What?
You know the scene from the Titanic, and the Titanic is actually one of my favorite movies, only because it's like one of the best ship sinking scenes. It's a great ship sink. Otherwise, the whole movie I could just do without it. But the one scene in the movie that this kind of BS black emotional currency hope peddling reminds me of is as the Titanic was sinking, the most ridiculous thing that was going on was that a band was playing beautiful music as the ship were going down and people were dying in the freezing water and also trapped in the bowels of the ship. Now, you can talk about the symbolism of the band fully dressed in their evening wear and playing beautiful music as this ship is going down and these tens of thousands of people are dying. But symbolism is all that is, because at the end of the day, these people were dying. They knew they were on a sinking ship. They did nothing to mitigate the fact that if they stayed on the ship, they were going to die, so they stayed on the ship. They didn't do anything about the fact that they were about to die. Mm-hmm. That's what this garbage feels like, looks like, smells like to me. All this crap, when you got black people responding to black people like us and Yvette Carnell and Sandy Darity and Derek Hamilton and all of these black people who have the data, who have the history, who have the facts telling you the ship is sinking for black folk, y'all. It's been sunk. We don't even have a ship, to tell you the truth. We've been floating around in the life preservers and they've been telling us it's a ship and that all we need to do to get a bigger ship is to paddle faster. But you got people responding to data and economists and history talking about, well, these people don't offer people any hope. Hope isn't going to change politics. Hope didn't create this situation. Politics did. And feel good BS hope, that's not going to change politics. Hoping that we can address the racial wealth gap is not going to convince one politician to actually do it. You got people, and then you have people, because history is my thing. And we're going to talk about history and why the ties to history and why this report from the Samuel Dubois Institute of Economic Studies at Duke University, the history behind why this report is so, I love myself some history, because you can argue with me all day long. You cannot argue with the history, not if you have any sense. And if you don't want to accept it, that's your problem. I can't do anything about that. Then you got people talking about black people shouldn't be involved in politics because, we've been involved in politics and what has that gotten us? But then these very same people who say that we shouldn't be involved in politics are the same people who use the quote from Martin Luther King Jr., I have a dream. They use his I have a dream speech as an excuse, as proof for why Martin Luther King was not political. But let me tell y'all something. Let me explain to you why history matters and why it is critically important for you black people to understand your history. Because sometimes we can't just educate white folks. We got to educate stupid black people too.
Well, I mean, I think that even takes a priority sometimes over white people.
Yeah, in this case, we got to educate our people first.
Right.
You want to tell me Martin Luther King wasn't political because he did his little I Have a Dream speech? First of all, people just take that one section out of context from the entire speech. I wish they'd read the whole speech. But this speech was delivered in 1967. It was addressed to the Hungry Club Forum, and I had actually never heard of this forum until I did the research on this speech. And it was a place where sympathetic white politicians could meet out of the public eye with local black leaders who were excluded from many of the city's civic organizations. Politics. Mm-hmm. Even though these white politicians didn't feel safe enough to talk to black leaders in public,
right,
they at least made an effort. And I'm not giving them a pat on the back. I'm just telling you how they did stuff back then. Martin Luther King, the people that some of these black folks tried to use against black people advocating politically, saying that, well, he wasn't for politics because he said he had a dream. No, Martin Luther King Jr. talked to white politicians about policies that needed to be changed in regard to racism, poverty, and militarism. Right. The three evils that plagued American society. We're going to give you a link to this article. And still do. Yep. And still do. But this portion of this speech really struck me. This is the actual transcript from his speech. So these are the words of Martin Luther King Jr. In 1875, the nation passed a civil rights bill. That's right. Mm-hmm. The 1964 civil rights bill was not the first one.
Oh my goodness. So it was one before that.
There were many before that. In 1875, the nation passed a civil rights bill and refused to enforce it. In 1964, the nation passed a weaker civil rights bill. And
hold up. So they passed a weaker bill in 64 that was weaker than the one in 1875, 10 years after slavery?
That's what he said. Wow. And that is actually true. That is absolutely true. In 1967, Martin Luther King Jr. said that in 64, a weaker civil rights bill was passed and even to this day has failed to enforce it in all of its dimensions. That is true to this day. In 2018. In 1954, the Supreme Court rendered a decision outlawing segregation in public schools, and even to this day in the Deep South, less than 5% of the Negro students are attending integrated schools. We haven't even made 1% progress a year. If it continues at this rate, it will take another 97 years to integrate the schools of the South and our nation. And don't tell me Martin Luther King Jr. was all about ideology and dreaming and praying and singing and kumbaya, because he said, let us be sure that we will have to keep the pressure alive. We've never made any gain in civil rights without constant, persistent, legal, and nonviolent pressure. Don't let anybody make you feel that the problem will work itself out.
That's deep. That's deep.
That was from Kumbaya, I Have a Dream, MLK, that a whole bunch of black people like to use to tell us black activists who are pushing for policy change that will address not just poverty, but discrimination, militarism, and racism. Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't political. But see, if you are one of those hope-peddling, silly, substanceless, ahistorical, you don't even know your own doggone history, but it makes you feel good to shame black people by telling them that they're not behaving well enough for white people to do right by them, or that they're not behaving well enough for them to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. If you get off on that kind of stuff because that makes you feel good, then you're an idiot.
And you know, and the thing, basically a lot of this stuff comes from because of a lot of criticism that people like Yvette Carnell, that we get, And a lot of it is that black folks just don't want to hear that we're broke.
Come
people,
on.
You know, I mean, you know, they say, oh, well, you don't have any solutions. You don't have this. And I'll borrow a line that Yvette says all the time, is the fact that we have solutions. You just don't want to hear them. We have the solutions. And I think that what is so dangerous in this whole approach to political activism in the black community is this thing. And I'm, you know, because we're so ignorant of history, many of us are, is the fact that how we believe that economic changes or changes in our economic status is somehow going to have us transcend the barriers of white supremacy. You know, I mean, this belief that's being recycled again, and I see it a lot, being recycled again, I mean, it shows how ignorant we are of history. The fact that black communities in the past had the same attitude, that black communities in the past, the prosperous communities that we had in the past, that were what? Destroyed by white people.
Right. Black
businesses burned down by white people. You know, I mean, and that's not to say that as a community that we shouldn't strive for those things. I definitely think we should. But at the same time, to put all of our chips in that basket, when dealing with white America and white supremacy and white racism and the brutality. See, we don't never talk about that. The brutality of white supremacy. That to put all of our chips in this basket and say all we got to do is have businesses and then that's going to keep the heat off our ass. Or all we got to do is do this and do that. Nah. If we look at our own history in this country, we find out that in some cases we were more prosperous than white people. Right, which is why so many white people were pissed off. And that is what pissed them off, to want to kill us, that want to burn our stuff down. A lot of the lynchings, now they have that new lynching museum down in the lynching memorial. Memorial, right. A lot of those lynchings were business people. Were black business owners who just through their own genius and their own talent pissed off some white people who didn't like them prospering. So what we're saying is that there has to be a total plan. There has to be, in order for us to move this forward, there has to be more than just creating businesses. There has to be, because there is no do for self without government. Nope. There is no do for self without policy. Oh. First of all, you know, I hear people all the time talk about, well, all we got to do is get some land. Who you gonna get it from? Who you gonna get it from? They taking black land from blacks who already got it. You know, so who you gonna get the land from? You got to deal with politics for zoning. You got to deal with politics to even build on the land. You got to deal with politics to do a whole lot of things once you get that land. So all this stuff about doing for self and not dealing with politics, you're living in a fantasy world, because you're not going to be able to do for nothing without the government being involved. Yep. Even paying taxes on the land. What? The government don't want that. So the thing of it is that we can't sit with the fantasy that black capitalism alone is going to open up these magical doors for us, where cops who get ready to beat me in the head and say, "Are you a business owner?" I am. You know what? You have a nice day, sir. I'm so sorry to have inconvenienced you. I'll just go over there and just beat that person that just came out the projects over there, because you know they shiftless. But you go ahead, sir. But you've worked hard. Right. And, you know, so we really need to get out of this fantasy world that somehow green never erased the black in the past. Oh. And it ain't going to erase black in the present, and it ain't going to erase black in the future. Those things have to get done, because white supremacy and racism is ingrained in the social fabric of this society, something that you cannot buy your way out of. Look, man. Let me explain to you why politics is so important in addressing racial income inequality. Excuse me, because I'm so glad over here on YouTube, you know, we got people throwing around phrases like white terrorism and I mean that's like, politics were used to protect white people who literally murdered black people and destroyed black communities and businesses. Politics did that, protected that.
by just not doing anything, by just refusing to prosecute
That's right.
murderers. I know you don't believe me. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Okay. You don't believe me.
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
Come on, come on up, article. Oh, it's taking too much. Okay, here we go. This is from blackthen.com. And this is just a short list. It's not even comprehensive, it's not complete, it's not conclusive, it doesn't include everything. There's actually another list that is much longer and much more comprehensive that we're going to look at in a minute. But you want to talk about all the black businesses, black people who have done everything right, started their businesses, lived responsible lives, got married, went to church, went to school,
right.
Took care of their communities. And what happened? Well, in the summer of 1906, I think that's the first one up here. Ooh, don't freeze up on me. I think it did. Uh-oh, I think it's freezing up on me, y'all. But in the summer of 1906, the Atlanta race riot. Now, people call these incidences race riots.
I call them pogroms.
But they were pogroms.
Yeah, there's pogroms.
Because they were really the destruction of entire black communities, specifically because they were black and they were successful and they were self-sufficient. Now, the excuse that was always used was, there we go. The excuse that was always used was, some random black guy assaulted a black woman or assaulted a white woman.
Right.
That was almost always the excuse. Or a black person basically forgot their place and got into an altercation with a white person.
That was like probably the number 2.
Right. So here we have Atlanta, 1906. When the Civil War ended, African Americans in Atlanta began entering the realm of politics, establishing businesses and gaining notoriety as a social class. We were doing our thing. We were making up the ground that we had lost. We were catching up to white people.
Because we were slaves.
Because we were the hardest working people on the block.
And we also was like, damn, we were slaves. So, wasn't nobody paying us nothing. So now we got a chance to make this grip.
Yeah.
So we like, man, look, we going to make this grip, man. We seeing how the white folks was living.
That's
so
right.
we want to make this grip too.
And,
we want to live like that.
And because we were formerly enslaved, we were among the most skilled class of laborers in some parts of the country.
Probably most parts of the country.
Right. So we could build our own houses. We didn't need to hire anybody else to do that. We did that. So we could grow our own vegetables and produce. We didn't need to get any. We didn't need to have tenant farms to do that. We did that and sold our own produce and made our own money. We were gaining notoriety as a social class. Increasing tensions between black wage workers and the white elite began to grow, and ill feelings were further exacerbated when blacks gained more civil rights, including the right to vote. Now, here were black people, rich white people were pissed off because black people were actually making a paycheck.
Exactly.
Because we were no longer forced to work for free.
Right. And it also poked a hole in the whole narrative that they had about black people not being able to take care of themselves.
Exactly.
Because the whole slave system was white paternalism.
Right.
Right. It's out of white Christian love.
We have to take care of them, or else they'll just fall out in the streets and starve to death.
But what our people showed them was that wasn't the case. We could take care of ourselves.
Exactly. So this, along with a political atmosphere where all candidates, but especially because at the time the Southern Democrats were racist, who were pushing for ways to disenfranchise black voters. They were pushing that, and black people were just like, look, we're tired of this. We's free now.
Right.
And we's minding our own damn business. So what's your problem? problem. The Atlanta Georgian and the Atlanta News began publishing stories about white women being molested and raped by black men.
Oh, here we
The
go.
Georgian and the News were white newspapers. These allegations were reported multiple times and were largely false. On September 22, 1906, Atlanta newspapers reported 4 alleged assaults on local white women. Didn't happen. Soon, look at this. 10,000 white men and boys began gathering, beating, and stabbing blacks. Just random black people all over the place. It is estimated that there were between 25 and 40 African American deaths. It was confirmed that there were only 2 white deaths. And in the process, black businesses, black homes, black communities were destroyed. 10,000 white men and boys.
That's an army.
Not one of them were prosecuted. Nobody was prosecuted for murdering black people and destroying black people's property.
And we see that wasn't just an isolated incident.
No. That's how politics protected white terrorism. That's politics right there. Mm-hmm. The system is on your side, allowing you to disenfranchise other people and destroy them if you want to.
Right, exactly.
And the people who are the victims have no political recourse against you.
There was no militia that came in to stop that. There was no army came in to stop it. No law enforcement came to stop that kind of that murdering and brutality.
Exactly. We all know about, well, maybe we don't all know. I got to stop saying. I got to remember not everybody knows all this history. You want to talk about all we need to do is start our own businesses? Black Wall Street, Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma, destroyed, utterly destroyed. The thing that makes Tulsa unique in the history of white terrorism against black people is that it was the first time in the history of the United States that an airplane was used to bomb a community.
And that's significant. And but I wanted to say this too, because I think that some people joined in late. We're not bashing people who want to open up black businesses. What we're saying is that is not a strategy to success in this country.
Exactly. Not for black people.
Not for black people. That's not a strategy to not for success. Let me put it this way. It's not a strategy to effectively deal with the obstruction of white supremacy in this country.
Exactly. Because when you have, again, politics, a system that allows an entire neighborhood to be looted, firebombed from the air, and burned down by white rioters, and all of that wealth and property was taken away from black people overnight.
Right.
Overnight. That they had spent years, decades building up for themselves. All of it was taken away overnight. There were no insurance claims that any black person was able to file and recoup their losses.
And they had business insurance at that time.
They did, and nobody honored those insurance claims. And we know, we have documented proof in the case of Tulsa that every insurance claim that black survivors filed was denied. Every single one.
Even though this was documented in newspapers of the day, it was well documented. But still, like you said, the insurance companies wouldn't honor the policies.
Then Then you've got the race riots of 1919. That happened all around the country.
That was Red Summer.
That was the Red Summer of 1919, where white people were basically pissed off that black people, again, that the first incident that we talked about was in 1906, right? White people mad that black people are minding our business and taking care of ourselves and are gaining our footing in society on our own without their help. Then in 1917, you've got another black community destroyed. Then in 1919, you've got black communities assaulted and attacked and destroyed by white mobs all across this country in cities. I think the last time I looked up the history, it was more than 30 cities across this country. in 1919. Then you had the destruction of Tulsa, Oklahoma in 1921. Then you had the destruction of Rosewood, Georgia. I think it's in Georgia.
Florida.
In Florida, thank you. Florida in 1923. At what point in the history of this country has politics not protected white terrorism against black people, even when, especially when, we have established our communities, our businesses, our institutions, and white people just felt like those niggas are getting a little bit uppity, they getting too much, we need to fix that. We need to take everything they have from them because they're gaining on us and we can't have it. You can't tell me that when you have a repeated history of that happening, that we're going to address the legacy of that by just continuing to start our own businesses. And then these people act like we've never started our businesses before. Like entrepreneurship is like this thing that black people don't know how to do. Clearly, the record shows that we're very good at it. We're actually,
pro integration, pre-integration in the South. Where else will we gonna go?
Exactly.
So if you travel through the South during the time of Jim Crow and segregation and stuff, you had no choice but to use a lot of black businesses, black hotels, and black people was, what else you was gonna do? Suffer the indignities of Jim Crow, or go to a black business where you didn't have to. There was a book called The Green Book that showed black travelers the black businesses that they could go to along the road. Right. It was a guide for black businesses or businesses that would serve blacks. It wasn't all black businesses, but a lot of them, basically, if you was taking a road trip during the 30s and 40s and 50s, probably in the 60s, there was the Green Book. And that kept you out of, that kept you on, it directed you to businesses that black people could patronize. Right. You know what I mean? Without threat of, running into
white racist terrorism.
Yeah, the crazies. So this is well documented that this is part of the African experience in this country. What happened is that now people are saying this like it's something new, like it's a new gospel, a new discovery, and what we're saying again is that it's nothing wrong with that. I think that we should open more business, especially where we live. But I think that it's kind of short-sighted to think, first of all, that every black person can do that. All white people can't open businesses. Nobody can open businesses. And it's kind of short-sighted because it doesn't really deal truthfully with the infrastructure that it takes to open up a business. So you just don't put your coins and nickels together and get a business, because most businesses fail. So you don't just put coins and nickels together and get a business and ride off in the sunset and don't have to worry about being pulled over by the cops or nothing like that. No, what it is the fact that I think that it's short-sighted. It doesn't really truly address the reality of what it takes to open up black business. Not saying that we shouldn't do it. I believe we should do it. But the people who advocate this ignore politics. And that's what's detrimental.
That is the problem, because politics were not just used to protect white terrorists when they committed unspeakable acts of violence, when they took what we had built repeatedly throughout history. Politics was also used to directly create laws that kept black people from continuing to do the very thing that people are sitting here saying we should do now. Start our own business, save more money, buy a house. How was politics involved in that? I'll show you how politics was involved in that. This is from the Equal Justice Institute. And this is a really, this thing, every once in a while I go through and look at this thing, but it's really hard to go through because it is basically a timeline of racial injustice from 1610 to, I think it goes up to 2018. It is probably one of the most sobering and gut-wrenching and sickening chronicles of the history of racial hatred in this country that you will ever look at. Because it's all here in one document and is on a very convenient timeline. So you can see all of the racial injustices that were committed against groups of people, not just black people, but Asians and Hispanics and other immigrants also through every decade.
Right, exactly.
So, but let me show you how politics were used to directly create laws to disenfranchise black people and to keep us from owning homes, starting businesses at the rate that white people did. July 5th, 1935, President Franklin Roosevelt signs the Discriminatory National Labor Relations Act. Now, the bill was not called the discriminatory. It was called the National Labor Relations Act.
Right, right.
But the NLRA was a discriminatory piece of legislation. Why was it? And I hope you guys can see this. Let me expand that a little bit more. I hope you can see that well. Throughout the 1930s, white Southern Democrats secured amendments. Oh, let me stop right there. Because I really want to make it clear that conservatives always use the fact that there was a time when Democrats were just like openly racist because they were from the South. The ones from the South were from slaveholding states.
Right.
But they always forget that the Southern strategy existed and the parties basically switched memberships because the Democrats didn't support the 1964 Civil Rights Act, so they decided to go to the Republican Party, where Goldwater promised that he would reject it. Please tell me if my history's right on that. Far, yeah. So the racists, open racists, the Southern racists.
Right, but the only thing that I wanted to add to that is this belief that the Republican Party, which is not the Republican Party today,
right,
that the Republican Party somehow held their head above water on that. Both parties always courted the racists in the South.
Exactly.
They always did.
They always did. So let's get that. I just wanted to get that straight because I'm tired of Republicans and conservatives using this talking point that, Democrats were the racists originally.
And you're the racist now.
Stop. You're all racist now.
And you're the racist now. So what's the point?
All right. So throughout the 1930s, white Southern Democrats secured amendments excluding the majority of blacks from the benefits and protections of New Deal legislation that built the central pillars of the modern middle class. The Southern congressmen struck agricultural and domestic workers from the law establishing Social Security, barring over 60% of the black workforce overall, 85% of black women, and almost 75% of the Southern black workforce from receiving Social Security benefits. This included retirement benefits, welfare, and unemployment payments. All right, that's Social Security. Here's where starting your business, our ability to start a business and own a home, a problem was created through politics for black people. The Southern Democrats, capitalizing on their control of leadership positions in Congress and their effective veto power over almost any legislation, similarly barred farm workers and domestic workers from the protections of laws, creating modern labor unions and setting minimum wage and maximum hours. So the reason black working people have historically less money and have historically and are still having a hard time with discrimination in labor unions is because that's an historical problem.
Yeah, it was set up that way.
Right. The Southern legislators secured provisions requiring local administration of the GI Bill. That's states' rights, y'all. When these people talk about they are for states' rights, ask them to finish the sentence. States' rights to do what? Right. States' rights to decide who benefits from federal legislation and who doesn't.
And see, the thing of it is that if anybody knows how politics work, that was a compromise.
Yes, sir.
The fact that you had soldiers, no matter where they came from, in one army defeat an enemy, or and come back victorious. Yet the compromise, because they knew that those soldiers coming back, they knew that they had to deal with the black GIs.
Right.
So they knew that black soldiers was going to be asking for their look, where's mine at?
Mm-hmm.
Where's mine? So the compromise was made probably even before the war ended. That, hey, look, we're going to pass the GI Bill, because see, all the white boys coming back from the war, they going to expect their part.
Right.
Because we got to remember, in World War I soldiers marched on Washington because the government reneged on the benefits that they were supposed to get.
Say it again.
The government reneged on the doughboys, the World War I veterans. And so they marched on Washington, and the government basically just, they had a tent city out here in Washington, World War I veterans. And they wanted their benefits. The government reneged on their benefits. And so what happened was the government sent the army to remove the veterans out of D.C. And a lot of them were shot. And a lot of them were black veterans too. The government did not want a repeat of that. So this is where the GI Bill and all this stuff come from. They was going to make sure that they honored the World War II veterans. However, they also understood that the black soldiers was going to be coming back looking for their share too. And the compromise was made, in my opinion, that okay, the white guys gonna come home, they're gonna want theirs. But what we do about the black guys? I'll tell you what we do. We'll let the states decide that.
They do that
exactly. Today. We'll let the states decide it.
That's exactly what they did.
So it's not on us. The federal government played Pontius Pilate.
Exactly. Oh, that's good. Yeah. That's good right there. And here's the proof. The Southern legislators secured provisions. Come on, highlight. The Southern legislators secured provisions requiring local administration of the GI Bill, but not just the GI Bill, ladies and gentlemen. Small business loans, home mortgage assistance, educational grants, and nearly all forms of federal financial aid that built our modern middle class and the assets that can be passed from generation to generation. Here's where politics were directly used. Now, before, with the protecting the white terrorist mobs, politics was used to just not do anything.
Right.
Now we have politics being used to directly disenfranchise black people, to be proactive in making sure that black people do not have equal access to the same federal benefits that white people do. And this was the New Deal program.
Mm-hmm.
So when people who believe that all we need to do is start our own businesses in order to address racial inequality in this country, when people who believe that all we need to do is save our money to address racial inequality in this country, when people who believe all we need to do is buy our own homes and that we could get more money, we could accumulate generational wealth if we buy our own homes.
Right.
Politics during the New Deal made sure that we would not have the kind of wealth in order to do any of those things.
Because the status quo had to be maintained. White supremacy had to be maintained.
Exactly. So now you have a population today of black people that has a wealth. Let me see if I can go over to this report now. Now do you understand why this report is important? Mm-hmm. Now do you get it? Let me find this.
All the pieces matter.
All the pieces matter because they all fit. That history is why this exists.
Come on now.
Look, y'all. It honestly doesn't get simpler than this. You can start as many businesses as you want to. Really. And I'm not saying, like we said, we're not sitting here saying that black people shouldn't start businesses. Start a business, please do. Go right ahead. Understand that you and your business, first of all, you are probably going to be denied a small business loan by the Small Business Administration because there is documented discrimination against black people still in federal agencies, especially in, so you might not get a small business loan. So if you're not rich already, you don't have the startup capital to get the equipment and the property and the marketing that's needed for your business.
And not only do you do you not have the startup capital, as you, Jackie, are about to see by the chart, neither do the rest of us.
Neither do the rest of us. So even if you did a GoFundMe to start up your business, more than likely, unless somebody dies, people ain't giving up that kind of money.
Nah, they ain't giving up that kind of money.
Because we don't have it. And you can see that we don't have it. The politics that intentionally kept black people from benefiting from New Deal policies that gave white America an economic boost that it intentionally didn't give black America is why the median household net worth by race and household income quintile is as lopsided as it is. Let me go back up to make it a little bit more plain. Even among black people who have jobs, the generational wealth that white people were able to pass down through GI Bill policies, they were able to pad their household net worth where black people couldn't. We had nothing to pass down because we weren't allowed access to any of those programs. For home ownership in particular, because this is another thing people say. I had a conversation with somebody who I used to go to church with. Ooh, I still get mad when I think about this conversation.
It's something to get mad about. It's definitely something to get mad about.
I'm sorry. Let me give y'all a little break from the screen while I figure out what I'm doing over here. So I had a conversation with a young man, and it kills me how every generation of black people think that they have answers to a problem that black people have been dealing with since we've been here. And the answers have always been the same. Martin Luther King Jr. has the same answers that Dr. Derek Hamilton and Dr. Sandy Darity and Alan Adjett and all of these people who wrote this report from Duke University, same solutions that Martin Luther King Jr. had. Same solutions that the Black Panther Party had, actually, in their 10-point program. What was the second point of the Black Panther Party's 10-point program? I'll tell you before we end the show. Don't let me forget.
I won't.
But it's the hot topic today because it's something that Bernie Sanders announced that he is going to run on or that he is going to introduce. And people are acting like, woo, Bernie Sanders has come up with this great idea. Yeah, Bernie's great, but Bernie didn't come up with this idea. I'll tell you what it is before the show ends. But anyway, had this conversation with this kid. Kid graduated from college. Very bright fella. And I guess he was, able to put a little money aside or got some money from his parents or worked. I don't know. And I think he does real estate. And he's one of those people who does the classes for teaching poor people how to save their money.
Don't tell me financial
literacy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be financially literate all you want to, but if you don't have enough money to pay your rent, feed yourself and clothe yourself, then teaching me how to save what I don't have, what? And you're honestly going to shame me because if once I scrape together $2.50, I like to get a coffee from Safeway instead of making my own coffee. That $2.50 every week is going to keep me from being broke. Get the hell out of here.
And we already spoke about on the show before that black people not saving is a myth.
It's a
black
myth.
People save more than almost any more than any demographic in this country.
Right. But this brother, in this conversation, he threw out every trope about why black people are broke. Oh, well, you know, if you would buy a home, if you had bought your home when you were renting, then your house would be worth something that right now. Never mind that when I was renting, I was working a minimum wage job, $5 an hour, and nobody could afford to buy a house with for, you know, working $5 an hour, not in Washington, D.C., not even 30 years ago. And the reality is that for many black people, home ownership, and we used to believe this because it made sense, right? Because the wealth of most people in America is derived through their home. At least that's what we think.
That's what they told us.
That's what they told us. I mean, this whole thing is like it's an education for us too. We're learning some new things, having to unlearn some stuff. And we had to unlearn this whole idea that home ownership is the key to unlocking generational wealth for black people.
But they don't explain why, you know, black people get shamed about this now too. Mm-hmm. But the reason that black people and brown people went into during the early 2000s, before the crash, mm-hmm. and black people and brown people, poor people, were running when these predatory loans were coming out, and Wall Street came up with a way on how to prey on poor black and brown people through these making these housing loans. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, because we were told that owning a home was the fastest way or the best way to secure wealth in this country, poor black and brown people saw the opportunity when Wall Street and the bankers tricked them mm-hmm. into these housing loans.
Come on now.
With these adjustable rate mortgages and all this other kind of stuff. Just another way to exploit poor black and brown people. And then what happened? People got in because they believed what was told to them.
Yep.
And so, you know, I mean, just because you're poor don't mean that you don't want to do better. So then they get into these things. Find out that it was all nothing but 3-card Molly. Uh-huh. That's all it was. Banker 3-card Molly was standing on a bunch of sand. And then so when the rug was pulled from out of him, nobody blamed the bankers. Nobody blamed these people that suckered these people in here. No, what they did was they blamed the poor black and brown people.
That's right.
How dare you? Why didn't you read the contract? I mean, you know, you have to have a law degree to read a lot of those contracts. Mm-hmm. You know, so the average homeowner ain't read all of their contract with the bank. You know, so I mean, so once again, it was put on the backs of poor black and brown people that is your fault mm-hmm. that you was too ignorant to read your contract.
Right.
It was your fault that you got into a house that you couldn't afford. You know, even though the myth out there, just like we see now with college, everybody's telling to send their kids to college, and what happens? We bought into that line too. And then we sent our kids to college, and what happened? Many of us have kids who have college degrees who aren't even working mm-hmm. because in this society, the unemployment rate of black children in particular who have college degrees, black young adults, is 50%. Yet they're still stuck with the student loans. So this is how they all finagled us into the American dream when it comes to black people is the carrot on a stick.
Right.
And that's what it is. It's the carrot on a stick. And they got us like the donkey, constantly chasing that carrot, but we're never going to get a bite of it. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is they don't blame the fact that they got the carrot hooked up where you can't eat it. They blame you for not being able to go get the carrot, even though they already rigged it so you can't eat it. If y'all can understand which way I'm going. So
I do.
Yeah. So I mean, again, this is the con game, mm-hmm. and that's what the American myth has been for us. One big con game.
That is exactly right. So you got black people out here pushing other black people with this idea that if you just buy a home, then you'll be able to amass this generational wealth. Well, in our favorite report, our new favorite report, this really is our new favorite report. This is the report from Dr. William Darity Jr., Derek Hamilton, Mark Paul, Alan Aja, Ann Price, Antonio Moore, and Katerina Chiapris from the Samuel Dubois Cook Center on Social Equality, Insight Center for Community Economic Development. What we get wrong about closing the racial wealth gap. Last week, we talked about the first myth, greater educational attainment. We couldn't even get through the whole, just that one myth.
And we provided links if people want to see this.
Yes, yes. Okay. There's already a link to this report in the live stream on YouTube and on Facebook. You guys on Periscope, you just gonna have to go over to YouTube and grab it.
You know what I feel like while you're doing this?
What?
I feel like Denzel Washington's character in Training Day.
What do you
mean?
But
he told Jake, "I'm sorry, Jake. I had to bring the ugliness to you. I'm sorry I had to do this to you, Jake. It's not pretty. It's not pretty, Jake. It's ugly. I'm sorry. I'm the one that had to bring that to you, Jake." That's how I feel.
It does kind of feel like we're beating people up with I'm sorry. I got to give you give you the blow to the body. But listen, we're not going to fix this if we don't admit that we were wrong about it. And even we have to admit, even we, the Luqmans, have to admit that we were misguided about this home ownership thing.
Oh, yeah.
The home ownership being the driver of the racial wealth gap.
But that's what education does. I mean, when we, when you educate yourself, that's what it does. It forces you to change your views if you're about learning and about knowledge. It forces you. I mean, you got to be ignorant to learn this stuff and still hold on to the same old beliefs. Exactly.
Otis Griffin says that we should reach out to Derek Hamilton. He's the bomb. Yeah, we're sort of stalking him on Facebook.
Yeah, we have. He haven't replied back. But
we're going to ask him. We are going to ask him and Dr. Darity and some of the other people if they would be willing to come on our show and if they can talk to y'all, because I don't know. Sometimes I think people are like, they just make this stuff up. But no, we do want to get him on our show, him and a couple other people. But let's talk about.
If I want to make something up, but just real quickly, if I'm going to make something up, it won't be talking about how poor we are.
No,
if I'm going to make something up, I'm going to talk about that $1.7 trillion spending power that we're supposed to have.
Ooh,
that's a lie.
They talk about that here too. But let's dig into this home ownership thing and why owning a home does not it is not going to directly address the racial wealth gap, and they point out that this misleading connection came from a Demos report, and that's where I got my study, did my studying, and that's where I understood this connection came from. But the problem is, it's the way they word the connection between home ownership and wealth. They say in the report, the word drive suggests a causal link between home ownership, home equity, and the generational wealth, meaning that black people don't have generational wealth because we don't own homes.
Right.
That not owning a home causes us not to have generational wealth. Mm-hmm. However, a major flaw in this reasoning is that by definition, home ownership, home equity is a component of wealth. Hence, the statement that home ownership drives wealth is equivalent to saying that wealth drives wealth.
Right.
What does this mean? Let's go back to this. This is what that means. When you have government policy that has made it physically, economically impossible for you to access the same programs that white people were able to accumulate the wealth required to buy homes and own businesses.
Right.
Black people didn't have access to those programs, so they didn't have the ability, the opportunity to accumulate the same kind of wealth. You add into that policies that discriminated against black people in employment, in pay, in social benefits. how are black people going to have any money in order to buy a home? You need wealth. You need the wealth to buy the house. And if you don't have the wealth, you can't buy the house.
And the government knew that with the GI Bill.
And the people who were able to buy the house through the GI Bill and through the New Deal programs and other kinds of programs, they were able to pass down the wealth from that initial house to their children so that their children could buy a house. That is generational wealth. Black folks ain't had that. Why? Because the government would not let them. Literally. Okay, let's go back over here, because there's some other good stuff in here. I hope y'all getting this. As discussed below under Myth 5, we're not going to get into that tonight, but we'll get to that eventually. We're running out of time, but I'm going to try to go a little bit faster. Blacks with positive wealth do tend to have a greater share of their asset portfolio in home ownership than whites, since a home is the largest, usually non-depreciating major asset held by most American households, regardless of race. So black people with money have a house, usually have a house that they were able to buy with their money. And most of their wealth is in their house.
Yeah, they haven't figured out a way to take that yet.
Right. More wealth is in their house, but more of their asset portfolio wealth is in home ownership than whites. Why is that? Because white people have more money than we do. You see, you can't tell black people that we're going to make money by investing, or we're going to make up the chasm in the racial wealth gap by investing like white people do, when the top 10% of people in this country already own 80% of the value of the stock market.
Can you say that again?
Jesus.
I mean, because that's a very important point.
It is.
Because, I mean, look, we're going to name drop because it fits into what you're about to say. But you have people like Dr. Boyce Watkins. You have people like Dr. Claude Anderson. People I respect, especially Dr. Claude Anderson. But you got people like them that will sit back and especially Boyce Watkins. He'll sit back and tell you, oh, all you got to do is save, invest, study. Save, invest, and study. Okay, first of all, we already destroyed the myth that black folks don't save. That's not true. And the thing about investment, that's why I said that, because I like what you said, is the fact that we, first of all, we have to understand that investing is gambling.
That's say that again.
You know, investing is gambling. I don't care if your boy is about ready to open up a pizza shop and you want to invest in his business. You still gambling, hoping that he becomes successful. You don't make any money unless he gets a profit.
Exactly.
And enough profit to pay you. Not just a profit, enough profit to pay you.
Exactly.
So that's number one. And then the kind of investment that the Boyce Watkins and them are always throwing at us is the fact that that's gambling. And so you're relying on things that you can't control.
Right.
So I might as well take my money and go down to the liquor store and get a lottery ticket. I got just as much chances of hitting it big with the lottery ticket as I do with putting my money in the stock market and hoping that it make a return, enough return to close the racial wealth gap. Now listen to what I'm saying. Not just get a return, but enough return from my investment that I can close the racial wealth gap. This is what the whole show is about. It's not about you making some dollars. It's not about you making a few coins. It's not about you going into Bitcoin making a couple of dollars. We're talking about the racial wealth gap. The type of wealth gap that experts say will take African Americans 228 years to close.
Exactly. And when we're talking about investing, you're not going, none of us, not one of us, not even all of us together collectively are going to invest enough in order to close the gap that exists between that 10% of people who already own 80% of the value of the stock market. We might make some money. And see, I know what people are focusing on when they say, you know, you just need to invest some money, because they always use the example of Nike or Microsoft or Apple or Netflix.
Right.
They're always using these examples. It's another form of this empty hope that we traffic in, that we love to use in order to focus in order not to focus on what really needs to be done to address these problems. Because the hope is that you are going to invest in the right stock at the right time and get into the market at the right time. Right. And then you gonna magically, you're gonna get lucky. Like you said, right. You're going to get lucky, and then the stock you invested is going to take off like Netflix did, like Amazon did. Like you got it on the ground floor. Let me explain to you why that's bullshit. And I'm sorry, I did pretty good not cursing a whole lot. Sorry, y'all. Let me explain to you why that's bull. For most people, your hosts included, we do not have the kind of money where we can make the kinds of investments where even if a company we did invest in took off, we can't afford to invest and buy like 1,000 shares of stock. We don't have that. Even if a company's stock is like 50 cents a share. In order for us to see a real return on our investments, we have to buy a few thousand shares of stock.
And guess what? We ain't got that kind of money.
We don't have that kind of money. I'm not ashamed to admit that we don't have that kind of money. You know why? Because we got to pay this mortgage. We got to eat. You see I'm fat. So you see I don't miss a meal. And
we don't have that kind of money because decisions were made long ago, before you and I were born, that put the mechanisms in place to perpetuate inequalities.
Exactly. So
it's not our fault. It's not our fault.
And then let's be real honest, because you said that investing is gambling.
That's what
right?
It is.
And it is. But let's be honest about something else. Let's be honest about the inequality in information that exists between rich people and the rest of us. I mean, rich people and all of the rest of us, but especially rich white people and black people. See, wealthy white people who already have a couple tens of thousands or a couple $1 million to throw at some upstart company, hoping that it will take off and the stock will grow. First of all, they have that disposable income in order to gamble like that. But secondly, they are trafficking in information that we don't have access to.
Right.
You and I have to rely on like the Morningstar report. Have you ever tried to read that? It's a little bit complicated. Or the E-Trade reports, or whatever, share. We use Capital One's, because it used to be Ing, and we just use it because I've had it for like 7 or 8 years. Capital One's Share Builder account. So I read the little reports from. We have to rely on that. People who have already made their millions and billions off of the stock market, the people who own 80% of the value of the stock market, they have information about companies that you and I will never ever have.
Yep.
Never. So please stop thinking that you can just invest your way through and invest your way out of the effects of the racial income inequality, the racial wealth gap, and the effect that politics has had on those things.
And that thing, and what you just mentioned about us not having the proper connections, or having the connections to know what they call inside information. That's another thing that black people are well behind white people in, and that's social capital.
Oh, yes, because Adam Joseph Hasiak, I hope we pronounced your name right, said on the stream here, the information comes from, guess what? Politics.
Exactly. And because white people have, for the most part, social capital, which means they can rely on other folks and that are in places of worth,
right?
That are important places that they can gain something from.
Exactly.
If you want to know about black people not having social capital, all you got to do is ask any black person about going to somebody in their family trying to get a job. Your daggone uncle been working for Department of Public Works for 50 years, but somehow he's still just holding on.
I'm just holding on to this job. Right. I don't know if I can help you, man.
Right, he's still just holding on. He can't put a word in for you. Or your Uncle Joe, who's been there 50 years and claim everybody likes him. And claims how, you know, he eats at the boss's house for dinner and they always never forget him every Christmas. But then you say, well, Uncle Joe, put a word in for me so I can get that. Man, last time I did that, man, I put word in for a couple people, man. They made me look bad. I don't put myself out there no more. You know, so these are our realities, man. In black life, especially poor black life, you know, y'all talk about rugged individualism. That is how we actually exist. Exactly. Rugged individualism, because for the most part, unless you got some relatives who, you know, who are willing to share it, some of what they have with you, and I have some of them relatives, thank God. But for the most part, it's like I don't know what to tell you. You on your own. Yeah. So so the struggle's real. It's very, very real. So, okay, let me get back to this report, because I don't want to keep y'all for too much longer. But this is so incredibly important to deconstruct this myth that all we need to do is buy a home and then we're going to amass all this generational wealth. Excuse me. In the middle of this, the second half of this paragraph, nonetheless, in the aggregate, whites have considerably more resources. What we just say, white people have more money. Yep. They have more money because politics were used to make sure they had more money. That's just true. And likewise, have greater home equity and also greater value in every other type of asset than blacks as well. This includes the stock market. Exactly. Okay, so let me go down to, I love these, the blue highlighted parts, because the blue highlighted parts, they're like, what's going on? Nothing. Because the blue highlighted parts are the parts in this report where I seriously stop reading and just stare at it. And I'm just like, what? Are you kidding? Oh, I'm so sorry. You were just sitting there looking at the people were looking at you. Yeah. I'm reading the report. I'm sorry. Okay, so down here, it says in this report, for households who do not own a home, wealth levels are low for both white and black households. However, black non-homeowner households have a mere $120 in net worth, insufficient to feed a family for a week. If you don't have enough money to feed a family for a week, how are you going to buy a house? That's true. Yep. The data indicates that white... No, you have to save, invest, and study. That's how you do it. If you can't afford to feed your family, then it's your fault. It's your fault because you didn't save, invest that $120, and study on how to make that $120 $240. I bet you your kids is running around with Nikes on. I bet you they are. They're just here we are. The aggregate of black people in this country don't even have, among black non-homeowners, don't even have enough money to feed a family for a week. And we still got black people claiming that the reason black people don't have anything is because we're buying Nike and we're buying designer bags and we're going to the movies too much. And don't forget, going by the grocery store getting them crab legs. You know, I mean, we get shamed for that too. Well, I was going around here buying them crab legs. You know what I mean? Black folks, once a month, black folks buy crab legs. You got some crab legs, and people lose their damn minds because we want some crab legs once a stinking month. When they're on sale. When they're on sale, but they'll shame me about that too. So the data indicates that white households who are not homeowners, look, y'all. The data indicates that white households who are not homeowners hold 31 times more wealth than black households that do not. There is no amount of investing, saving, wishing, praying, hoping, voodooing. I don't care what it is you do with that $120 that black non-homeowner households have. Mm-hmm. That is going to catch up and close the gap between them
and white non-homeowner households that have 31 times more wealth than black households, non-homeowner households. And among households that own a home, white households have nearly $140,000 more in net worth than comparable. Now, comparable meaning they're basically equal. Same level of education, same family structure. Everybody's married in both families. If they're married in one family, they're married in the other family. If they're single in one family, they're single in the other family. If everybody's working, they're comparable. They're basically equal. Then how come the white households have $140,000 more in net worth than the black households, doing the same thing, doing everything right?
Because they had a longer head start.
And in chart language, because you know I love my charts, this is what that looks like. This is what all that looks like. This is what the legacy of that legislation, the NLRA, looks like.
And we'll get hate videos done against us because we highlight the orange.
Yep.
And black folks don't want to. The black folks don't. They don't want to accept the orange.
No, that's not us. If more of us would buy homes, we could be over here. No, you can't. No, you can't. Do you know why? Because home value is another whole issue that is subjected to racial bias. I'm going to find the article for you. Excuse me, but they do point out here in this report, to be sure, a sizable difference in home ownership rates exist, as well as a dramatic difference in home equity across black and white homeowners. So even among black people who own homes, there's a drastic difference in the amount of equity black homeowners have in their homes. And that is because of, aside from the geographical differences of where people own homes and homes are valued differently. There's an article either last year or year before last from the Washington Post, I think, where they compared the home values of neighborhoods in well-to-do black neighborhoods across the country and well-to-do white neighborhoods that were comparable. Incomes were the same, occupations were pretty much the same, education levels were pretty much the same, and they found that the home values of the houses that black people owned were significantly lower than the home values that white people own. Almost the same planned neighborhoods. Sometimes the neighborhoods were near each other. One of the most egregious examples was in Atlanta, Georgia. And we all know that Atlanta is like the black Mecca, or it used to be. I don't know if people still think it is. But black people who own homes in middle class or upper, even upper class neighborhoods, their homes were valued less than comparable homes in white neighborhoods. So even among black people who buy homes, when we go to sell our homes, we don't get to sell our home for the same amount of money that a white person might be able to sell their home. And even if we're not trying to sell our home, if we're trying to tap into the equity of our home to give our kids a head start, to pay for their college tuition, to help them buy a home, to pay for medical expenses, we generally don't have as much equity in our homes as white people do. And that doesn't have anything to do with black people not taking care of their property, because I know that some black people will say that. I know they do. That has everything to do with racial discrimination still existing in the housing market. Woo, let me see where, let me go down here, because there is something I wanted to point out before I hopped off, because you said something about that $1.2 trillion.
Oh yeah, we got $1.2 trillion. Man, shoot, we should boycott. Man, not spend our $1.2 trillion that we got.
Now, we try to have a little bit of fun with this because it's just so depressing. It's just so depressing. It's depressing because the data is what it is, and this is our reality. But it's also depressing because we got people like the Cosbys and the Kanyes and the Candice Owens and the Ben Carsons, and they just all happen to have the same sounding first letter in their name. But you got all these black people who are the respectability pushers, who are the entrepreneurship pushers, who are the investment pushers, who are the education pushers, who focus solely on fixing black pathological behavior as the way to address racial income inequality. The only reason we're broke is because we suck as human beings, because we're amoral and we don't know how to control ourselves.
And we're stupid.
Financially, and we're stupid.
And we're stupid.
That's what these people focus on, instead of focusing on the data and the history. That's what's the most depressing.
And what we always say is that if you don't agree with the data, then you better bring some data to refute this data.
Yeah, because
you know what I mean? Because you ain't arguing with me. You ain't arguing with Jackie.
No.
This the data. And if you can't bring data to refute this data, then we don't want to talk to you.
No, we don't. So before we close tonight, I want to read from you. And this is actually something that we were looking into. We studied ourselves because we are huge fans of Dr. Jared Ball.
Yeah.
And have a lot of respect for him.
I mix what I like.
Listen to I Mix What I Like for so long on WPFW. Let me find it. Here it is. And listen to Dr. Jared Ball educate on this $1.2 trillion black buying power myth that even Dr. Claude Anderson has repeated many times.
Yeah,
Boyce Watkins repeated it. We believed it at one point.
We all believed it at one point.
But then when you think about it, just when I think about, because they always talk about like movies and entertainment, right? Mm-hmm. Now, we live in the hood. That's just true. We do. There is no movie theater in this neighborhood.
None at all. We have to actually leave the reservation to go to a movie theater.
And in every hood I have ever been to, anywhere, there's usually no movie theater in the hood.
No.
So if black people can't get to a movie theater every week in their neighborhood, and you know, most of us are so many of us are poor. We live in neighborhoods that have crappy public transportation. A lot of us don't have our own transportation.
That's why they call our neighborhoods underserved.
So how are we getting to all these movie theaters to spend all these trillions of dollars? Black Panther aside, y'all, you understand that it wasn't just black people who went to see Black Panther. So okay, right. I'm getting off topic.
But then again, like you said, and we mentioned this on the show last time, is nobody criticize or pathologize white people for camping overnight for the newest iPhone.
Nope. No, somebody did say that the conservatives do it on Fox News, but who listens to them?
But the millennials don't look at Fox. That's old folks. That's old people. Exactly. That's old people at Fox talking to other old people who are their viewers about those kids today.
Exactly.
But even if they bring that up, they don't bring it. They bring it up as far as, how can I put it? It's saying to a kid crossing the street, look, a street that got a lot of cars. Mm-hmm. Look, you better look both ways before you cross the street. You might get hit by that car. Right. Okay, that's common sense advice. But you tell a black kid is, see, you so damn stupid. You can't even talk about, you're going to get hit because you're stupid.
Exactly. Not because there are a lot of cars on the street. There's no light. There's no crossing section.
You're too dumb to navigate
You are amoral.
Right.
You're not focused on getting married. You don't value your education, and you can't read properly. That's why you going to get hit. That's what we do. And we're talking about black people who talk to other black people this way. We're talking about the Cosbys and the Kanyes and the Candice Owens and the Ben Carsons. Let's close with this. $1.2 trillion in black buying power. Let me tell you why this bull. And again, we cannot thank Dr. Jared Ball enough for dispelling this myth. The claim that Black America has roughly $1 trillion in quote unquote buying power is popular, repeated mythology with no basis in sound economic logic or data. It's not based on anything real.
That's just what we told ourselves.
While the myth has a longer history, it is today largely propelled by misreadings and poor, or otherwise known as false, interpretations of Nielsen surveys and marketing reports. That is important. Because a few years ago, remember, there was a big deal about Nielsen not having their little television things in black houses.
Yeah, I remember that.
So, television, TV, media companies were claiming that they didn't know what black people like to watch. People were like, well, because you never asked.
Right, never asked us.
So if Nielsen ignored black households when it came to their television viewing boxes things, what makes you think they were really serious about surveying black people on what they bought? Get the heck out of here.
Good point. Good point.
So number 2, buying power, which is ridiculous. Buying power is a marketing phrase that refers only to the power of consumers to purchase what are strictly available goods and is used as a measurement for corporations to better market their products. Power here has nothing to do with actual economic strength, and there is no collective $1+ trillion that black people have and just foolishly spend ignorantly to their economic detriment. Number 3, the myth of buying power functions as propaganda, working to deny the reality of structural, intentional, and necessary economic inequality required to maintain society as it is, one that benefits an increasingly decreasing number of people.
But this is the thing. Go back to that again.
Okay.
Because I think that this next line, for all of the people who think that just having for all of the people that feel that all we got to do is just economically transform ourselves and we'll rise above the racist cops and we'll rise above all racism. This is the thing that I think should wake us up.
Note, also, even if we accept the estimated $1.2 trillion of total black buying power as valid, it is still only 60% of the value of J.P. Morgan's total assets.
Now
That's one bank.
Now to put that in gangster terms.
What's the gangster terms?
Put that in gangster terms. Yo, son. They got more guns than we got, man. Yo, son, we can't even try it, man. They got too many guns. We ain't gonna compete with them, y'all. And the thing of it is that we made a mistake. Now, one thing I agree with Dr. Claude Anderson on. Well, one of the major things that I agree with Dr. Claude Anderson on is that we made our major mistake by trying to compete with white people.
I think so.
We tried to compete with white people, not knowing the reality of the situation, the reality of our situation. Because look, our ancestors were enslaved by them. So the only paradigm we had, the only example we had was what they done.
Right.
So right. So here you are now. You're supposed to be free, right? So you're supposed to be free. And now all of a sudden now, if you're going to take an example from the slave, and I don't blame our ancestors, in order to be free, you think, well, what is the best way to success? Well, I'll imitate the people who I see who are successful.
Right.
So if they did it this way, then if I do it this way, I'll be able to say. But the fact of it is, we didn't wake up quick enough and realize we felt that we could catch up with them. Our ancestors could catch up with them if we just strive harder than them. Our ancestors knew what type of pedigree they were about. Our ancestors knew that what they were made of. Right. That they could outwork anybody, out this, out that. But they didn't understand what the game was rigged. And the game was continuing to be rigged. And so our ancestors didn't look at that because, I won't say it was ignorance on their part, but they didn't look at it because there really was no avenue for them to address it. Because the government did what it could to keep our ancestors from achieving any kind of parity or implement policies, even though policies were around. Even though the government toyed with policies that could address this. But it was always the racist nature of the beast that always won the day.
That's right.
Jackie and I did some research and we found out, that the government on a couple of occasions came up with legislation because they knew it was morally right to address the inequalities, and especially the economic inequalities of the newly freed Africans. They knew it. And so they came up with legislation, but it was always the racist nature of the beast. That always like the racist nature of the beast now, whether it's in Starbucks, whether it's in the Waffle House, whether it's everywhere we go, wherever we go, it's always the racist nature of the beast. And I would leave this. I found a quote before I pass back to you, Jackie. There was a quote, because I love James Baldwin. I think we need to re-examine James Baldwin.
Yes, we do.
And James Baldwin was asked a question about the white liberals, and y'all, whoever been following the show knows that I jump on the white liberals' asses a lot, because I think that in 2018 nobody should be on the fence. If you support us, you support us. All this on the fence, or we got to do this, and no, fuck that. If you are no more on the fence. So James Baldwin was asked about why he was doubtful about the role of white liberals in the civil rights struggle, and their effectiveness. Let me put it this way: why he doubted their effectiveness in pushing for civil rights. And he said, and I hope I get it all right because I've been reading it. He said, this might sound cruel. He said, but there are some exceptions. But he said, but in general, he said, my experience is that when it comes to the liberals, that they have attitudes. They have all the proper attitudes. He said, and oh God, let me tell you. He said they have all the proper attitudes, and he said, and when the chips are down, and you expect them to do, I'm paraphrasing, but do what you think that they felt about the situation, then they're not there. I butchered it up, but you can look at it up. But what he's saying is that we always all the time, we support you, we support you, we support you. But then when it comes time for a lot of y'all to get down in the trenches with us, then it's like, well, let's see what the alt-right says first. Or let's make sure that the dreamers can stay here, then we'll deal with y'all. Or let's make sure that we can do this, do that. Nah, man, we've been too long dealing with this, and as you see, the window is closing. The window on us is closing, so we don't have any more time, man, with our so-called allies sitting on the fence. You gotta be in. You got to be in this with us all the way, or we can't count you as allies. It's like back in the day, you and your boy, or you and your main girl, y'all walking and y'all rocking together, and y'all go through an enemy neighborhood or some places where y'all got some beef, and somebody jump on you. You ain't gonna look at the person that's with you, that's gonna sit down there on the side and be like, I don't know what to do. No, you need to come in here and help me do this too. So this is what we're talking about, is that what James Baldwin was saying, and it's so sad that in 2018 that we still have to ask that question: are y'all with us or not?
Right.
One line that I have to say. He said they have all the right attitudes, but no real conviction.
That's what it is.
But no real conviction. You know what I mean? So and I got to be honest with you. I mean, some of y'all make me feel like y'all like it the way it is. So that's just my thing, but, you take it away from here.
So, listen, we are not even done going through this report. But I hope that we were able to begin to make the connection between these people, especially these black people in these positions of some type of influence. I understand that people don't like to think that Kanye is influential, but unfortunately these days we measure influence by Twitter followers. That's annoying to me, but that's what people do. So, he's got millions of people following him, and he is miseducating people miserably in regard to politics and what black people are facing. And so are people trying to protect this legacy of respectability from Bill Cosby. So are people trying to make excuses for Candace Owens. So are people trying to make excuses for the Ben Carsons and the people who are telling us that all we need to do is start a business, and all black people need to do, because it's not all you need to do, it's all black people need to do.
Yeah.
All black people need to do is get married. All black people need to do is start a business.
All the magical fathers. And
the magical fathers that everybody says don't exist, but who everybody also says will make everything perfect. I don't understand.
But out of all of that, nobody addresses the system.
And that's the whole point. That's the whole point behind all of this focus on black pathology and everything we do wrong. The purpose is to not address the system. That's the purpose of these people. That's why the Candace Owens exist. That's why the Kanye Wests are used. Their lack of political understanding and education. That's why their comments. A broken clock is right twice a day. So he said that Obama was president for 8 years and Chicago didn't change. He happened to be right, but he was also pretty wealthy for those 8 years too. What did he do? And it's really messed up that he makes that observation that is accurate in defense of supporting Donald Trump. But those people exist to deflect the responsibility of the way things are from the actual entities that caused it. Politics in the system, and they are there to tell us that we're supposed to do everything internally to address these problems that politics caused and ignore politics. And it's odd because even the most radical black people that so many of us look up to, they didn't even believe that. Thanks you guys for reminding me of the second point in the Black Panther Party's 10-point program. Bernie Sanders recently announced that he is going to be introducing legislation for a federal jobs guarantee. Derek Hamilton, Sandy Darity, this group of folks from Duke University have written papers, have done studies, have advanced the idea of a federal jobs guarantee being a critical factor that is needed to address racial income inequality in this country. I mean, I was just reading an article today from 2015. So Bernie Sanders, he ain't new. He didn't come up with this. But not only did Sanders not come up with it, but the Black Panther Party actually included full employment for black people in the second point of their 10-point program. Black people have understood that it has been politics that's been used to deny full employment and the full benefits from our employment to black people since we've been free. Well, actually, since we were here. Since we've been here.
We only been fully employed when we were slaves. That's it. I mean, that's the last full employment that we were given.
So black people have been advocating for this one solution. It hasn't been the only one, but it's been one that has been consistently addressed and pushed as a solution as a response to systemic racial discrimination in this country. And people just keep acting like we don't have any solutions. Because these very same people who push this idea that, all we have to do are these 3 or 4 things to address racial discrimination and racial inequality in this country, the very same people always ask, well, where are your solutions? I don't ever hear you talking about solutions. Well, if you don't know your own history, of course you don't know that the solutions have been out there for decades. So now is the time for us to really ignore the distractions from these people. always telling black people all we need to do. Anybody who starts a conversation with all black people need to do is run away from them. Right? Just don't stop talking to them. Because whatever they're about to say next is some BS, and it's not based on data, the truth, or the history.
And you know damn well they ain't think it through.
You know they didn't, because there's no such thing. We can't get out of this with an all we have to do kind of solution. Politics in this one area with the federal jobs guarantee, that's just one aspect of it.
But see, this is the thing. We can't, you know, because Lene, she said, my problem with the, and I know we're going long. I just want to just address this real quick. My problem with the FJG, Federal Jobs Guarantee, is what happens to the disabled. Again, the disabled get dropped through the crack. Progressives. We have to stop looking for the perfect legislation before we get behind anything. We can tweak anything. If the government says federal job guarantee, take it, and then we'll work out the kinks.
I mean...
But we got to stop this thing about waiting for the perfect worded, all this stuff. I agree. We need to deal with the disabled. But first of all, we ain't even got the government to agree to it yet. So before we start looking into those particulars, I think we need to at least get it on somebody's agenda, and once we can successfully push that through, and have the Congress to push that through, and the president to sign it, then we say, look, we need to get these kinks worked out. But damn, let's get it on somebody's table first.
And I agree, but again, I wonder. This is why history is important. I don't understand why people are concerned about what current legislative proposals don't have in them when when we have a situation where politicians were able to do that. You know how they did that? They got into a room and they said, well, okay, I'll do this if you do that.
That's right. They compromised.
And it was a compromise that nearly killed us. But you mean to tell me we can't compromise to make sure that this legislation, and somebody actually said that the disabled are covered in this. I mean, but even if they weren't, you mean to tell me we can't get politicians to get in the room? We can't push these people to do for the disabled and other marginalized groups what this legislation did to black people, but to help them? Mm-hmm. Come on. We have got to learn, and when we really are going to close with this, we got to learn. We got to learn from even our enemies. These people did not sit around and say, well, you know, the New Deal is fine and good and all, but I don't know how we're going to keep black people from catching up with white people. No, they didn't. They sat there and said, how can we get this legislation to work in our favor and to keep those Negroes from getting what white people have? That's what they did. And if we can't be crafty and shrewd and just sometimes just flood, like you said all the time, politics is a blood sport.
It's a blood sport.
We can't go into this thinking we're going to ask nicely and these people are just going to give us what we want. No, Martin Luther King Jr. said, we go right back to the beginning. He said that we cannot believe that we can't keep the pressure alive. Let us be sure that we will have to keep the pressure alive. Don't let anybody make you feel that the problem will work itself out. Whatever problems we think exist with current legislative proposals, they're not going to work themselves out. We have to work them out. So if you're wondering about what legislation doesn't cover this person or that person, raise that shit with the people who proposed them. In this case, it was Bernie Sanders who proposed this latest one, and ask them, hey, Senator Sanders, does this cover the disabled?
And I'm sure, you know, if that's what that's what he supports, it's going to be on the website. But again, I mean, you know, this is what war is. Mm-hmm. You know, this is what war is. War is a battle at a time, and this is what we're about, you know. But anyway, we done kept y'all long enough.
We have. Oh my gosh.
And we appreciate y'all for hanging out with us this, you know, as long.
We really do.
I mean, you know, we have to get this information out, you know, and again, Jackie, just so we know, we're not against black business. We're not against black economic success. What we're saying is, if we want to highlight the whole thing, is that what we're for is what we're saying is that it's just not an effective strategy for dealing with white supremacist systemic racism. You must have politics, and we can't be distracted with Cosby, Kanye, Candice, and Carson, because they're part of the bougie black class that would never advocate for us anyway.
I got nothing more or better to say than that. Thank you all for joining us, for tuning in. Share this video on YouTube and on Facebook. Remember to subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. Consider becoming a patron, supporting us with monthly contribution or one-time contribution through GoFundMe or PayPal. Look up Luqman Nation under all those platforms, LuqmanNation. Check out Pitbull and Politics Saturday night at 9 p.m. on Spreaker. And thank you all very much for joining us tonight. Join us again next Thursday night, live in Luqman Nation, where we are continuing the discussion about this report from, from Duke University, from the Samuel Du Bois Cook Center on Social Equality. Have a good evening, everybody, and as always, be good to each other. Peace.
Peace.
Yay! You're not gonna sing?
Let me sing. I believe that you.
No, come on, you did not.